The cicadas had begun their chorus early that summer evening in Austin, Texas. Heat clung stubbornly to the air, even as the sun dipped low, staining the horizon with crimson and gold. Daniel Harris stood on the back porch of his two-story house, staring at the uneven rows of cedar trees that lined the property. He had lived here for 10 years with his wife, Claire, a decade of barbecues, Christmas lights, arguments about the mortgage, and whispered reconciliations under quilted sheets. But lately, something was wrong. Claire was inside, her silhouette visible through the kitchen window as she leaned against the counter, scrolling through her phone. The glow from the screen illuminated her face in sharp relief, and Daniel noticed the faintest hint of a smile tugging at her lips. Not the tired, familiar smile she gave him when he came home from work, but something different. Secretive. Alive in a way he hadn't seen in months. He felt it in his gut, that old primal instinct that gnawed at a man when the foundation beneath his life began to crack. Something was wrong. Daniel's days were structured. He woke at 6, brewed coffee, and left for his job as a project manager at a construction firm downtown. Austin traffic tested his patience daily, but he took solace in routine. Order was comfort. Claire's life, by contrast, had always been less rigid. She taught part-time art classes at a community center and spent the rest of her hours painting in the converted garage studio. She was talented, no doubt, her canvases often bursting with the kind of raw color and emotion Daniel could never understand. Where he saw clean lines and symmetry, she saw chaos and beauty. They had once loved that difference. He grounded her, she inspired him. But recently, Daniel noticed she had grown distant. Conversations at dinner became shorter. Her laughter felt rehearsed. And worst of all, her phone. Once left on the kitchen counter without thought, now never left her side. One night, as they lay in bed, she angled the screen away from him when a message came through. The faint buzz vibrated between them. Work? Daniel asked casually, trying not to sound suspicious. Claire's pause was longer than it should have been. Yeah. One of the parents about next week's class. But her voice betrayed something. A tightness. A script. Daniel turned toward the ceiling, his chest heavy. He knew that sound. It was the sound of a lie. Suspicion was corrosive. It seeped into Daniel's thoughts at work, gnawed at him in traffic, invaded his dreams. At first, he told himself he was imagining it. Maybe Claire was just stressed. Maybe she needed space. But then came the other signs. The sudden interest in jogging at night, though she'd never liked running. The new perfume he smelled faintly on her when she returned, sharp and floral. The careful way she washed her clothes immediately after coming home. One evening, Daniel arrived home earlier than usual. He found Claire in front of the mirror, applying makeup with an attention to detail he hadn't seen since their dating days. Going somewhere? He asked lightly, though his stomach churned. Just grabbing drinks with Melissa, she said, mentioning her closest friend. Girls' night. You don't mind, do you? Of course not, Daniel replied, masking the tremor in his voice. But later that night, when he texted Melissa out of curiosity, the reply came fast and blunt. Hey, haven't seen Claire in weeks. Why? The phone shook in Daniel's hand. His worst fear was no longer just a fear. It was reality, hiding in plain sight. Daniel wasn't impulsive. He approached this the way he approached a construction project, carefully, methodically. He didn't want to accuse without proof. So he started small. He checked phone bills. Late-night numbers he didn't recognize began to appear. He took note of Claire's schedules, her claimed outings. He even drove by Melissa's house one evening, just to see. Claire's car wasn't there. The next Saturday, when Claire claimed she had an all-day workshop at the community center, Daniel drove to the parking lot and waited. Hours passed, sweat pooling at the base of his neck. She never showed. When she came home later, humming softly, her cheeks flushed. Daniel forced himself to smile as she kissed him lightly on the cheek. Her lips were warm but foreign. At night, Daniel stared at the ceiling, his mind racing. He wanted to be wrong. He wanted desperately to believe this was all some mistake. But the evidence was mounting like bricks on his chest. The breaking point came on a humid Thursday evening. Claire announced she was going for a run. Daniel, calm on the outside but burning within, decided to follow. He waited 10 minutes, then slipped into his truck and tailed her from a distance. His heart pounded as she jogged 2 blocks, then slowed. Instead of turning into the park, she crossed the street and walked quickly toward the Holiday Inn near the interstate. Daniel parked half a block away and watched, breath shallow. Claire entered through the side door. 10 minutes later, a man appeared, tall, dark-haired, wearing a baseball cap. He glanced around before following her inside. Daniel gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles whitened. Rage and devastation battled in his chest, twisting him into something unrecognizable. His world had just caved in. Daniel couldn't sleep. He barely ate. But he needed to know who the man was. Over the next week, he followed discreetly, documenting their meetings. The stranger drove a black Ford, plates from out of town. They met in hotels, sometimes parked far from the house to talk in his car. Once, Daniel saw Claire laughing, freely, joyfully, in a way she hadn't laughed with him in years. The man's name, Daniel learned after some digging, was Ethan Collins, a traveling sales rep based out of Dallas. Married, too, with kids. The betrayal cut deeper knowing she hadn't just chosen another man, she'd chosen someone who risked everything for stolen hours. Someone who saw her as worth the danger. Daniel tried to confront her gently at first. "Are you happy?" he asked one night, his voice low. Claire blinked. "What kind of question is that?" "Just wondering. You don't seem yourself lately." Her eyes flickered. She shrugged, avoiding his gaze. "I'm fine, Daniel." "Really?" But Daniel knew the truth. And finally, after days of torment, he broke. One night, as she slipped on her shoes, Daniel blocked the door. "Where are you going?" His voice was calm but cold. Claire froze. "For a run." "Don't lie to me," he said, pulling out the stack of phone bills, the printed hotel receipts he'd quietly obtained. "I know, Claire. I know everything." Her face went pale. Silence stretched between them, suffocating. Then, almost imperceptibly, she whispered, "I'm sorry." The words shattered him more than any denial could have. The weeks that followed were chaos. Claire admitted to the affair, though she insisted it was just emotional at first, and mistake. Daniel raged, pleaded, withdrew. Their home became a battlefield of silence and sharp words. Divorce papers loomed like storm clouds. Friends and family took sides. Claire moved into a small apartment near downtown, while Daniel stayed in the house, surrounded by ghosts of what once was. But he couldn't let it end quietly. Not after the betrayal. Not after giving her 10 years of loyalty and trust. Revenge wasn't Daniel's nature, but betrayal awakened shadows in people. He hired a lawyer, one of the toughest in Travis County. He dug deeper into Ethan's life, quietly reaching out to Ethan's wife with the evidence. The fallout was nuclear. Ethan's marriage imploded. His company caught wind of the scandal, jeopardizing his career. Claire, caught in the wreckage, begged Daniel to stop. "You've made your point," she said through tears. "Please. Let it go." But Daniel couldn't. The fire inside him demanded more. The divorce finalized 6 months later. Claire walked away with little, the apartment, her canvases, a portion of savings. Daniel kept the house, the life they had built. On the final day, as she came to collect the last of her belongings, they stood in the empty living room. Was he worth it? Daniel asked quietly. Tears shimmered in her eyes. She shook her head. No. I was stupid. And now I've lost everything. Daniel swallowed hard. Not everything. You still have your art. Maybe that's what you really wanted all along, freedom. She reached for him, but he stepped back. For the first time in months, Daniel felt a strange sense of peace. Not joy, not victory, but closure. When the door shut behind her, the silence was heavy but liberating. The cicadas outside sang again, just as they had that night he first sensed something was wrong. Only now, he knew. The life he thought he had was gone. But in its place, something else had been born, a man hardened, but free.